The goal of this chat is to help give players a perspective of what coaches want. So even though not every coach is the same. So we're talking like how you can get in the good books, how you can become harder to drop, maximize your time spent at team training sessions. So in order to give you, the player, the best possible insight into what it takes to be successful, I've managed to get hold of perhaps one of the most successful coaches in lower leagues women's football. He's started a club from scratch, so he knows what it's like to be in Greater London 3rd Division, and his team's achieved 4 consecutive promotions, and they're now in the London and South East Premier Division, and that only leaves them 4 promotions from the Women's Super League. And the club now has a first team, a development team, 2 youth teams, as well as a first-class management team. So I'll welcome Will Boye. How are you doing, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well, thank you, Gaz. Thank you for inviting me on the call.
No problem. How are you and how are you dealing with lockdown at the moment?
I'll be honest with you, it's been a bit of a challenge in terms of getting out of the house on weekends and motivating myself to really go for runs. But actually, my players have been doing it, so I have to do it as well. But in general, I'm in school weekly and I'm delivering to the vulnerable kids, key worker kids. So in general, it's I'm still keeping myself busy, and I've got people to speak to. So I guess I'm quite privileged and lucky in that sense.
Yeah, happy days. So that sounds great. Do you feel like the ladies are pushing themselves over lockdown?
Yeah, I think they are. I don't think they've got a choice. I think the only difficulty around it, if I'm honest with you, is the fact we haven't got a return to football date. So not having a date to return to is very difficult for us to put a time frame on things. We often do, workout plans in blocks, so 6-week blocks, 7-week blocks, 8-week blocks. And what we're finding now is we can do it in 6 weeks block and say training's back in 3 weeks, and you're going to find them really ramp up their work rate, but there's nothing there for them to really push forward to, and that's challenging. So some may be doing it, some may not. It's difficult to track. But what we are doing, we've got an internal competition going on with our first team and B team, and we've mixed the two players up, and we've got like teams of 4, 5, etc. And they have to complete, say, 30k runs a week. But in order to qualify to get 3 points in the league table for how many runs you total that week, everyone in your team must have contributed to something. Yeah. So it's a bit of internal competition and a bit of, why are you not running? You killed us this week. So it's good. So we've got that going, which is nice.
Awesome. Yeah, brilliant. So yeah, that's, coming from that that aspect of competition, that is the main thing we want to kind of talk about today, is competitive aspects of women's football and factors that are going to determine success for them. So if you could just give us a brief background on yourself and your journey up to this point.
Yeah, it's interesting. Whenever I talk about my journey, people think it started off at Brentford Women's, where I began essentially coaching a women's team. But my journey actually started up north when I was in Leeds. I played for a club called Guiseley and did a bit of coaching whilst I was there. There was another team called Garforth Town. And I remember doing a bit of coaching for them, and that's really where it all ignited. I went from Garforth to Silsden, and actually started coaching the women's team there. And wow, that was an eye-opener, that really was. It introduced me to the world of women's football as it is now, as many people find it now, which is they're fully committed, hard-working. They're maybe not given as much as they could be, and I may come on to talk a bit about that later, but they really, really love it. And that for me is where I found the love for it. And people talk to me all the time, would you ever go and work in a men's game once you've got your sort of your pro license and you work your way up in the game? Never. I love the men's game. I watch it religiously, But my main passion when it comes to coaching and development is solely in the women's game. So then once I graduated from university and I moved back down south to London, I then asked Brentford Women's if they had any positions because I wanted to coach there. And they said to me they're starting an under-11 girls team. I'm more than welcome to help and coach within that. And I said, yeah, that would be amazing. I'd love to. And I really enjoyed that because I had that feeling of putting something together, and really constructing a team that could work really hard. And I had my level 1 and level 2 coaching badge by then. And I really loved coaching. And once those girls and we got that team together, it was all about coaching. And I remember going on so many development courses and doing my youth modules. It was very much, well, how can I improve this player and that player? And it was brilliant. And then I moved into coaching the Brentford women's team. And it was 2 back-to-back promotions for them when I moved on. And then I worked at the elite level with Middlesex Centre of Excellence. And that was a massive eye-opener. Everything I thought I knew, I didn't know. I'm working with players who are representing England's under-19s at the World Cup. And I'm there training 3 days a week. And here's me at Brentford thinking, I found the formula. We've had promotions and that was it. The centre closed down, however, and I moved into being a coach mentor. And that's where I regained that love for grassroots football again. And that's what led me to starting Ashford Women's, just everything I knew from Middlesex at the elite level and all the contacts I'd made to moving into the grassroots scene with my mentoring and just remembering how amazing it was coaching at that level. And everything's history now, I think we've just gone from strength to strength at Ashford. And like I said, everything I thought I knew, I didn't. And every year we're building and we're growing. And the game is as well. And I'm fortunate to be in this position.
Yeah. It seems like you really you've got Ashford moving with the times. You just mentioned the rate that women's football is growing at. And, I want to talk about the culture of excellence that you've kind of built around the club. And that's been there from day one. So I want to know, how have you achieved it, or how do you feel you've achieved it? And how important is it to review and reflect, and how important has that been in your process?
No, that's amazing. It's a great question. I mean, I go on so many coaching courses, and I've been a UEFA B license holder for a number of years now. But I remember probably about 6 years ago now, going on a UEFA B course just to get the feel of, am I doing the right thing? What can I pick up from this course to add to my coaching arsenal? And I met my assistant, Matthew, on that course. And, he never stopped badgering me about getting involved and so on. And I finally sort of got back to him and said, yeah, let's do it. And we sort of decided to work together at Ashford. So in answer to your question, I've created this culture of excellence by surrounding myself with people who are better than me, who know more than me, who push me all the time to give them more, to do more. And just when we think our squad is there and we've got a brilliant team winning on the weekend, the next question is, how are we going to perfect this position? How are we going to strengthen here? Or what are we going to do here? So we're always one step ahead of anything that comes our way. So, I've got coaches who work really hard. They work tirelessly. Actually, at 7 o'clock after this call, we've got another call about what we're going to do if the season is scrapped this year. What are we going to do if we come back again? And we've got a coaches call literally in 2 hours to discuss that. And we've not even got a return to football date.
Yeah.
So we're always trying to stay one step ahead, because the last thing we want to be doing is chasing our tail. So I've created that culture really of bringing in some really top draw coaches and staff. We've got an excellent staff member in Tia, who's a sort of a psychologist within our team. And that's not something every team has. But we have her there to make sure that we can get an edge over the competition. So if our players are in a good place psychologically, it gives them a higher probability to perform on game day. You know, and that's what we think of as well. So, and the players, when we think of the culture within the players that we breed at the club, it is a culture of excellence. You know, they are constantly challenging themselves and pushing themselves. You know, the senior members are turning around to the others saying, why weren't you at training the other day? You know, what's going on? You know, you want to play on the weekend, you know, training, you know, but that's where we're at. You know, we've got a girl who played WSL and she's like, I'm not leaving Ashford. This is where I want to be. This club is on the up. And that's all we ever hear. But it's because the players are constantly driving for better, but it's because we're always pushing each other for better as well.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. Okay, good. So, so I want to get on to the subject of the game itself, the women's game itself, and where you feel it is at its most competitive. So the things that you feel determine match outcomes, the kind of moments where you feel like the game is won and lost, aspects where you see the greatest need to improve in. So, you know, where you feel like as a team, you're going to get the most bang for your buck. Is it, you know, is it physical aspects in terms of, you know, are we dropping off in terms of energy with 10 minutes to go, or is it a psychological, mental toughness aspect? Is there anything that you would think of with that in mind?
I think psychologically the women's game is in a very, very good place. When I say very good place, that doesn't mean that there's no room for improvement. But if we rewind the clock back to 5 years ago, I think we were in a very different place within the psychological side of the game. But I think in terms of mental toughness and the resilience side of the game, you see a new style of stillness within the game. You know, everyone's really driven to succeed and perform and push themselves to be better. The physical side of the game has still got a way to go. You know, you've got the very top level of the WSL, which is full-time. And again, we're looking to improve our senior women's team at international level physically. And that's falling in line with the WSL top level. And then you look at the lower tiers that after that, and they're all part-time, and then you drop to ours, which is grassroots. And a lot of teams in the WNL, for example, train once a week, and we train twice a week. Some of the part-time teams at WSL2 train 3 times a week, and then full-time they're every day. So there's a huge gap. Yeah. There's a huge gap in terms of where we are now and where we need to be. And that, for me, is the biggest issue as things stand. And we see it in our game as well. We play a really, and I hate to expose it out here, but we play a really high-tempo pressing game where we like to press from the front, and we do want to make sure that our teams are relentless with it. And actually what we do is we block it, and I hate to give things away here, but we do block it. So the first 15 minutes we'll press, you know, the next 50 minutes after that we're going to consistently hold our mid-block, and then we're going to pick and choose moments to press, and then the final 15 minutes of that half we're going to go relentless and work on pressing again. So they have got periods of the game where they don't where they're not going to be totally outrun and feel too fatigued in order to execute that game plan for the final 15. But what we find in the first half is they're brilliant at it. And what we find in the first part of the second half, the first chunk, is they're fantastic. Then it gets to sort of the hour mark in the 60th to 90th minute, and we do find that's a bit of a struggle, depending on the opposition that we're facing. And we do find that's a struggle, and we do find that our analysis guys are telling us that's where we concede a chunk of our goals. Is it because we train twice a week? If we train 3 times a week, would that change? If we were full-time, could that change? So I do think that's an area of the game that needs huge improvement. Technically, I think the female players are getting better and better. We're working with a generation now where we had that huge growth in the women's game where everyone wanted to play. And now we're working with that generation where they did want to play and they received good coaching. And I'm just so excited within the next 15 years where these players are going to be technically, they're going to be outstanding, especially with the work going on now. But tactically, we do still need to kick on there as a nation within the women's game. because if you have players coming over from other countries, all of them do say the big thing they notice in England is the amount of turnovers that happens in a game. So we do need to educate our teams and our players in being more tactically aware and tactically excellent, to hold possession and be better at keeping that ball and hurting your opposition at right times.
Oh, yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, it makes me think of an interview I saw recently with, is it Carly Telford?
Yeah.
She Man City goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And she was talking about the level of coaching that she has received compared to young players who are coming through now. The amount of elite coaching that these younger players have received that are now coming through.
Yeah.
You know, she's talking about players who are 10, 15 years younger than her who have arguably had just as much elite coaching as her, because when she was coming up, when she was their age, she didn't have access to that kind of top quality coaching.
Yeah.
So yeah,
absolutely spot on. So and that's why I'm so excited about what the next generation are going to be like when it comes to them taking the big stage in the game.
Yeah. So obviously, leading on from that, you're going to start to see. I'm sure, obviously, you already get to see a huge amount of talent at your trials, because you hold annual trials at Ashford, and that attracts a lot of players. I've known that from even back in the day when we were in the lower leagues. You must have a huge amount of players coming down. Tell us a little bit about how your trials function, and also how you manage the coaches within your trials, and what you are asking the coaches to look for.
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. It really is, because we are so different, aren't we? And we all are attracted to different things. We do have what I call a player profile at Ashford. So what player would fit within our model at Ashford? And all the players are very familiar with, all the coaches, are very familiar with that. And it's not to say if somebody falls outside of that model that they wouldn't make it into Ashford, because we are very open to looking at different ways of working. But when we hold open trials and we get a load turn up, like you say, register and turn up, we split them into different groups, and we mix those groups every so often. And it will give every coach a different opportunity to lead. So we may have our conditioning coach leading, and we may have our forwards coach leading another group, and our defensive coach leading another group. And what we do is we have different practices to suit the different parts of the pitch. So that way it gives everybody an opportunity. If they're not very good at the fitness side of things, I say fitness and that's so vague, I know, but if they're not very good at, let's say, the 60-yard sprint versus sprint, for example, they may well be very good at recovery runs, just in terms of positioning themselves. If they're not very good at finishing, they may be very good at the build-up play in the middle third, because they may be the assist queens. So we actually try to make sure we cater for all those different needs. And we do know time's limited. They'll probably only get 25 minutes per station before we sort of move around in sort of a carousel format, before going into a game at the very end, where they'll get about 30 minutes minimum to showcase what they can do or what they're about in their preferred positions, but also in their tertiary positions as well, that they may have provided to us, or that we may feel we want to see them in. So what I say to the coaches is, especially if we take the conditioning circuit, for example, I say to them, look out for those who are very, very good energetically. So actually endurance-wise, they may not last, but they love to buzz about. Look out for those sort of players, because I also want to find out where in the pitch they play. And the reason I say that is because I'm desperate to not only create and develop within my youth teams, and I think I found one in the under-15s, but I'm desperate to identify that centre mid player who's just a ball carrier. And it sounds crazy, right? Because we think of midfield players being very good at spraying the ball left and right, good range of passing over short and long distances. But what about those who drive with the ball? Those, that get us off our seats and really excite us. So I say, don't just think of those who are good passers. Think of those who have got a good burst of pace, and those who are very good ball carriers.
Well, we've seen that trend, haven't we? In the majority of, you've already seen it in the men's game. The teams that are becoming successful are the ones who have, obviously they have ridiculously high passing statistics, but it's the players who can dribble. It's the players who can carry the ball. So when they haven't got those passing options and they're completely locked off, they're still holding on to the ball as long as they need to.
Absolutely. We've got to shift away in the women's game, especially from a traditional, play where you're facing, get it, give it, get it, play sideways, get it, play backwards. Don't get me wrong. That is very important to the retention part of the game, depending on which phase you're at in the game and what you're trying to do within that game. But you also don't want to move away from the real creative players and developing really creative players and making sure that you're consistently trying to look for the next best thing to improve your style and your brand of football. So just coming back to your question, we look for a lot. Like I said, we have a player profile we identify with, but I also ask for the coaches to look for the anomalies. So if this is the player profile and then you've seen somebody and you think, they look exciting, but they're very, very different to what we've got written down, we'll take them because we want to find better ways of working and ways which is not predictable to the opposition come Sunday. So that's really what we do.
Brilliant. And aside from those kind of technical, tactical aspects that you're looking for in the players, is there any kind of behaviour or body language, kind of these non-technical things that you're looking for?
I'm saying yes and no. So again, we want leaders. We want 11 leaders on that pitch come game day. So we are looking for those who socially are vocal and psychologically do spur people on, even if technically and tactically they're not there, because our jobs as coaches is to get them there. But I'm also looking for those really quiet gems. Those people who probably are a bit shy. They've probably lost their way in the game somewhere, but there's a little spark about them in some ways, and that may be technically or tactically. So what I try not to do is say, yes, I want this player because they shout the loudest. For me, even the quiet ones, I'm really intrigued about them, how they got here, why they thought to come to Ashford, and actually, is there something there that we can really work with? Because like I say, we've got a brilliant mental coach in Tia who could probably do 3-4 months of work, and this really quiet girl once upon a time could be the life and soul of this team. And maybe our future captain, who doesn't necessarily need to shout orders, but is very, very good in the dressing room. So yes, in the sense of we do want people who are going to improve us socially and psychologically, but no, in the sense of I certainly don't look at somebody and say, well, you don't say much, so it's a no for you. We do look at ways of really, dragging people along if they're a bit quiet and they've lost their way in the game.
Yeah, brilliant. And just finally on that subject, do you have any kind of message or kind of takeaways for a player who's had an unsuccessful trial? I know you've given out feedback forms to players when, at the end of the trial.
Yeah, I mean, every player who comes to trial with us, successful or unsuccessful, will get a detailed feedback form on what we have written out, and we spend time doing technically, tactically, socially, psychologically, just what we've observed, and also areas to improve and what went well and what we do think will be best for them next. But they don't have to listen to that. It's just our opinion. And what we always do is we put 3 or 4 teams that we recommend they go to, and 3 or 4 contacts who I personally know who they can speak to based on what I've said. So we'd always do that, and that's something which, if I'm honest with you, I think every club should do that, and I think every club has a I believe they have an obligation to do that, because if the person is taking the time to come to your club, you've got to take the time and give them that respect as well to be successful in the game, no matter where they go to. Yeah. So all I'd say to anybody who's been unsuccessful with us is don't stop there. Come back and try with us the year after, because the reason we said no to you that year may be the reason we say yes to you the year after, because actually you've very much improved on that, and we've seen you've improved on that, and we can do the rest for you now. So keep going. Don't ever take no as a no, is what I'd always say to people. And just keep working hard. And I working hard sounds very ambiguous, but just keep doing what you've been asked to do in terms of working hard, but also look to make sure you improve on what you're very good at, so that you can make that shine when you go back next time.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's talk about the players who are already in your team. What I want to know is whether players should have to be coachable, okay, and to what extent. Okay, so how do you know, some players are mavericks, some players don't like to be coached. So
yes, I know that all too well.
What about that?
Yeah, like I say, we take the rough with the smooth at Ashford, because I'm very much a happy-go-lucky coach, and Matthew's very much a no, do this. You know, we are very, very different in that sense. You know, I'm very positive. He would admit it himself. He very much sees the worst in everything, because he's such a sucker for improvement. But so am I. But we do it in different ways. So. Yeah, I mean, like I say, we take the rough with the smooth, and that's the genuine, honest truth. Of course, we want everyone to be coachable. That goes without saying. If you're not coachable, it makes life very, very hard for coaches to develop you and for you to be receptive to information. You know, and we talk about it all the time in all of our meetings we have with players and coaches. We need to move away from a closed mentality to an open mentality. And the moment the moment we can unlock that, we can take players from I can't do this to I'm going to work hard to do this. And that's really where you want to get them to. But if they're struggling, again, to take things on board, and we put them down into the bracket of not being coachable, something's gone wrong somewhere. It could be their coaching in the past. Maybe a coach has not been that, how can I put it, is not been okay with them as an individual, and because of that, you know, they've been casted aside. It could be that they've been the star of a team one time, and now they're coming into a team of full of stars. You know, there's so many different ways to look at it, but we've got to take our time with that individual, and we've got to work really hard with that individual, not the collective, that individual, to understand them, what changes have happened in their life. What do they need from us? Are they maybe having exams at school, college? Are they maybe working 2-3 jobs and then coming to training? Are they maybe unemployed and looking for work? You know, are they maybe finding training a bit too challenging for them, and we need to change how we coach that individual? Would they prefer 2-3 weeks in the B team before coming to us to gain a bit of confidence? There's so many different factors that can play a part in sort of everything that happens, even to go as far as, you know, as understanding a woman's menstrual cycle, you know, and there's so many work going on in that side of things. So again, you can't just cast people aside because we don't think they are coachable. That is definitely not the way I work, and it's not the way I ask my staff to work. But we've got to really delve deeper into this individual, give them time to breathe, but find out what's going on with them and how best to support them so that they can become coachable, and we can look to get the best out of them.
Brilliant. So it seems to be, it seems like you believe there is a route forward for every player, regardless of the position they find themselves in, whether it's that they need to develop technically and they need to improve themselves there, or they need to get fitter, or You know, we've talked about attitudes and how common it is for players to come to training and just not feel up to it. You know, they might just be in a bad mood, and like you say, they might have all sorts of things that are going on in the background that the coach doesn't know about.
Yeah.
So what kind of messages can you give for players who need to bounce back from poor behaviour or from poor levels, and in particular, you know, if a player is not in the team, if they're not starting, or they're not in the squad, how can players kind of come back from that kind of negativity?
It's a really good question. I wouldn't, and I'm going to change negativity to situation. Yeah, and it's only a part-time situation, right? Because if somebody is not necessarily getting minutes or playing, we can turn that into a really good situation where they play for the development team, for example, and get as close to 90 minutes as much as possible. They can be the star of the show training down, and they can really build their confidence up. They can come back to the first team in a much better place. So that at the moment is what we currently offer. But some people are unwilling to drop down. Some people are unwilling to move to play for a B team, because they potentially see themselves as too good for that side. And that is a genuine thing that happens in the game, and we faced a few of that historically. And what I'd say to those players is, then you've got to understand where the coach is coming from. You've got to be super patient. You've got to do more outside of football than anybody else does at this particular moment in time. And once you get to training, just because you may see others potentially coasting, is what I'd say. I don't think I've ever gone to a training session where everyone's coasted. We work to such a high standard. However, if you come to training and in your mind you feel others are coasting, then you've got to work 3-4 times harder than they are. You know, and that's what I'd say to them. Don't give up. But most importantly, have genuine, open, transparent conversations with the coach and the coaches and the staff, because the last thing you want to do is start thinking in your mind, well, he doesn't like me, or create scenarios in your mind that are totally false, when actually all it takes is a frank conversation to find out where they stand and where you are currently at, to ensure that both parties can be happy with an outcome. So communication is crucially important, and being open and transparent about the situation is. Playing for B teams and development teams to certainly aid your cause in getting your coach to watch you on a Sunday for 90 minutes and saying, actually, this is why we signed this player. Let's give her an opportunity, rather than coming on for 15, 20 minutes every week. That's not going to do you any good. Or go out on loan to another club, maybe a league below.
It's about playing at the end of the day, isn't it?
It is.
Because to play is an opportunity to be seen. You know, even
Absolutely.
if it might not be being seen by you, but it's an opportunity to get better, isn't it?
Exactly that.
So obviously you're going to have players within your squad who have they've come through all of that. They've gone through the trials. They've gone through establishing themselves, displaying the right kind of mentality, and all these things that we're looking for. So I want to know what kind of things make a player most difficult to drop.
Now, this is a really hard one. Goals, you know, if they're scoring, I'm certainly not dropping them. Goals make it difficult to drop. Clean sheets make it difficult for you to drop them as well. Having a never say die attitude makes them very difficult to drop. But also being a motivator is very difficult to drop that player. In short, if you're somebody who's going to come and perform to the best of your ability every single week, you're going to find it very, very difficult to sit on that bench. You are going to be on that field for as long as possible. because coaches want to see desire. Coaches want to see that you want to perform for that club. Coaches want to see that you understand what success looks like and that you're doing everything you can to achieve that. Success in performances, success in results, success in the end result, I guess. And that's really important. So that's what makes it very hard to drop. Not necessarily anything specifically, to be honest with you, Gab, such as, well, you've got to be the best on the field. Again, I think that's far too vague. And like I said, you need to be the goal scorer. You need to be keeping clean sheets, be it the goalkeeper, back three, back four, back five. You need to be the person who is spurring everybody on, that motivator. And I think that way you'll be earning your shirt every single week.
Nice. Okay, so let's get your opinion on psychology. Okay, you've talked about Tia, who you've got on board recently, and we've already heard you speak a little bit about what you feel is important on the psychological side of the game. What can you tell us about what Tia is doing with the players, and what kind of made you want to get her on board?
Yes, she's excellent. I mean, during lockdown, predominantly, she holds workshops every 2 weeks with the players. It used to be weekly, but of course now we don't have a return to football date. We're doing it, every 2 weeks. And she'd split the group into groups of 5, 6, and she changed the groups up every time she has a workshop. And it's very much a collaborative workshop, these are, so we'll hold them over Zoom. And last week, for example, we did it on goals, so goal setting. The week before, we did it on resilience. Before that, we've done it on communication. And it's not just a workshop for the players, it's also for the coaches and staff as well. How can the coaches and staff communicate better with each other, with the players? There's always room for improvement, sorry. How can they set goals that align itself with what everybody else expects and wants as well? So she's absolutely brilliant. How can the coaches be more resilient to ensure they're not putting unwanted pressures onto the players on game day? So the workshops look and tackle all those different sides of the game. And she's very calm, she's very knowledgeable. And aside from that, what she also does, she does work with players on a one-to-one level. So I know she's working with a player at the moment on being more positive. She's an outstanding footballer, this girl in question. She performs to a very, very high standard on game day, but little things in the matches will get to her, so such as refereeing decisions or poor distribution from other people in the pitch, poor decision making. And sometimes it will really get to her because she sees pictures before they happen. And Tia's working with her to build on that and become a stronger player mentally. And you already see, just before we locked down, a new side to her at training and a new side to her at game day, and just how more positive she was. And it reflected so well in her game because she's playing the best football I've ever seen her play. Wow. She's the fittest she's ever been. And it all goes hand in hand. It's not just a physical game, it also is a mental game. And if you find yourself in a really happy place mentally, you're going to find yourself in a really happy place on game day.
That sounds like a small little bit of proof of the concept of narrative and this kind of story that we all have behind us, which basically shapes the way that we play the game. And I've experienced this personally with my casual Sunday league football and the way that obviously you play Saturday football, the way that we carry ourselves into games, and we have this baggage from our past that shapes the way that we perceive ourselves during the game. So it's like you say there, you're going to have players who are stuck in this mindset of, this is how I've always behaved when this negative thing happens, or this is how I've always behaved when I make a mistake. It leads to another mistake. And do you see that there is a way for your players to become the best versions of themselves through Tia.
Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. Also because of the fact that she is very understanding to the way the players would be feeling because she played football herself.
Yeah.
You know, we're not just talking about somebody who's come from a background of no experience of playing the game and is simply going based on what she thinks she knows. She very much has been in their shoes, literally, as well as metaphorically, and is in a very good position, is in a prime position to assist these players in bettering how they think and how they think, you know, and that's important.
Brilliant. All right, well, thank you very much for your time. Are there any final things you'd like to add that you think will be helpful to the young players watching this?
Yeah, I'd say to any young players watching this, just keep playing football. Whatever you do, get yourself out there and play. No matter, please don't think of the club you're playing for in terms of trying to play for the best club ever. Please don't think of the league, that reputation. You know, just the process will take care of where you need to be in the future. Just go and play football, go and enjoy it, play with your friends, go and play with coaches you know and trust. Go and develop to be the best version of yourself, because it's a brilliant game and years fly by. So don't waste it sitting down on somebody's bench thinking I might get a game here because the badge looks good and the men's side are half decent. You know, go and play football no matter where it is and go and enjoy it.
Brilliant. All right, Will. Great. Thank you very much for your time.
More than welcome.
We'll talk again soon.
Take care, guys.